Hi everyone, it's Erin from Sweets by Skip. Today we're going to be making pie dough by request. A lot of people are afraid to make pie dough because it doesn't always come out right. But today we're going to discuss how to make sure your pie dough comes together perfectly every time. In addition to making the dough, we're going to fill it with apples. And then we're going to bake it. And then we're going to eat it. Here we go! In the bowl of your stand mixer, you're going to place all of your dry ingredients, your flour, salt, and sugar, as well as your cold butter cubes. The smaller your butter cubes are, the better they will incorporate into your dry mixture. You should also make sure that they're cold, because if they're warm, the butter is simply going to melt and not create any flaky layers. If you don't have a stand mixer, you're more than welcome to rub the butter into the flour with your fingers. Just making sure that you keep the dough as cold as you can, so working quickly if you're doing this by hand. I'm turning the mixer to speed low, and I'm going to let it process until the butter is to the desired size. My mixer's been going for between 5 and 7 minutes at this point. You can see that the butter chunks are broken up pretty small, about chickpea size. And the dough is still cold because it hasn't taken long to mix. At this point, I'm going to add my ice water and lemon juice. If you don't have ice or you plan ahead, you can keep your water in the fridge and it should be fine. You don't need to have any ice. If you do choose to use ice water, just make sure you strain out the ice before you pour it in. You're going to want to add your water and lemon juice just in kind of a drizzle so that the dough can get well mixed. And then you're going to let it process until it starts to come together. My dough now has all of the liquid incorporated, and it looks a little shaggy. So I'm going to dump it out on the counter and continue to knead it until it comes together into one solid lump, as you'll see that I do here. Again, keep your hands off of your dough as much as you can. You need to be able to process it with your hands, but you also need it to stay cold. So dump it out on the counter and then get it done. Move quickly and get it back in the fridge. Once it's processed and smashed down into this nice little brick, you're going to wrap it in plastic wrap, and then again get it back in the fridge as quickly as possible. Alright everyone, our pie dough is now wrapped and chilling in the fridge. And coming up next, we're going to see Daniel chop the apples for the pie. My husband, Daniel, thinks that I like when we bake together, but really what it is that I don't want to chop apples for the pie. So here's Daniel with some apple chopping. With our apples chopped and ready to go in the pie, now we're going to start rolling our chilled dough. I've divided it into 2 pieces. This will yield 2 10-inch crusts, which is slightly too large for my 9-inch pie pan, but we're just going to trim the edges. When you're rolling out your dough, make sure you use ample amounts of flour so that it doesn't stick. Another way to prevent it from sticking is to constantly rotate it, as you can see that I'm doing here. Roll it to thin, but not so thin that it's going to crack when you lift it. But if you roll your dough too thick, then it's just going to be a stodgy, gross bottom to your pie. You want your pie dough to be nice and crisp and not too thick on the bottom. So as you can see here, I've rolled it into, I don't know what shape that is, but it's going to go on top of my pie pan, and then I'm going to trim it. It's very important while you're pressing your pie dough into your pan to make sure that you get it into all of the corners. If it's not properly pressed in, you're going to have weird steam bubbles in the bottom of your pie, and it's also going to make it slump. As you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm trimming the edges of my pie because you don't want the crust to be too thick around the sides. Then I'm going to press it down one more time just for good measure, and then I'm going to dock it lightly with this fork. Next, we'll fill it with the apples. In a large bowl, toss your sliced apples with all of the dry ingredients listed in the slide before this one. Next, you're going to drizzle your lemon juice in, and then we'll add it to our pie shell and dot the top with the cubed butter before rolling out the second crust and placing it on top. Here's an apple pie pro tip. Use 2 different apples in your pies, at least. I've chosen a Fuji and a Granny Smith. The Granny Smith for the tartness and the texture, and the Fuji so it cooks down into more of a sauce and for sweetness. Rolling out your top crust is the same as rolling out your bottom crust. You want to make sure it's thin, but not too thin. And make sure you use ample flour and rotate it frequently so that it doesn't stick. The difference between the top crust and the bottom crust is going to be a score, which you'll see that I do here with a knife directly on the countertop, which would have gotten me killed at my mother's house. If you place your finger right in the middle and try to find the middle of the dough, it's going to ensure that the score lies in the middle of your pie instead of kind of cattywampus on the side. If you see here, I've placed it right on top, and I'm going to trim around the sides just like I did with the bottom crust to make sure that we don't have too thick of a crust around the sides. Crimping is a very important part of pie making. It ensures that the seal between the top and bottom crust is going to be firm enough to prevent your apples or whatever filling you choose from leaking out. As you can see here, I'm tucking the dough and making sure that the seal is formed completely before I'm going to go around the edges and do the decorative crimping or pinching almost that you'll see. We zoom in a little so you can see it a little bit better. Alright, so my edges are crimped, my seal is formed from the bottom to the top of our pie, and then I'm going to put this in the freezer for an hour so that it has time to firm up before we put it in our oven. Meanwhile, I'm going to preheat the oven to 400 degrees. If you have a pizza stone, you can go ahead and put that in the oven, and that'll ensure that the bottom of your pie gets nice and crispy. So this is going in the freezer for 1 hour while the oven preheats, and then we'll meet again. Okie dokie, everyone. My pie has been in the freezer for an hour now while my oven has been preheating to 400 degrees. What I have here is a sheet pan lined with parchment paper that I sprayed with some Pam. And this is just in case your pie bubbles over while it's in the oven. You don't want it to get on the bottom of your oven or even on your pizza stone. So I'm going to set my pie up on here, and then we're going to go in the oven for 1 hour. Make sure you set your timers. Your pie is going to be done baking when it's bubbly and brown on top. Here we go. Alright everyone, my timer just went off. So the pie baked for about an hour and 15 minutes because we chilled it down so it needed time to come up to temp. And I'm going to pull it out of the oven right now with gloves. You guys, she's so beautiful! So here you have it. We made our dough, we cut our apples, and we baked our pie. Another option for a crumb top pie is you can do a light egg wash on the top and sprinkle some big sugar crystals on there and bake it, and then you'll get like kind of a nice caramel crunch on the top of your pie. I've chosen not to do that because I don't think it needs it. But anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for making a pie with me.